Up to mighty London came an Irishman one day. As the streets are paved with gold, sure everyone was gay. Singing songs of Piccadilly, Strand and Leicester Square. Till Paddy got excited, then he shouted to them there. It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye, Piccadilly, farewell, Leicester Square. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart's right there. It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye, Piccadilly, farewell, Leicester Square. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart's right there. Paddy wrote a letter to his Irish Molly, oh, saying, should you not receive it, write and let me know. If I make mistakes in spelling, Molly dear, said he, remember it's the pen that's bad, don't lay the blame on me. It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye, Piccadilly, farewell, Leicester Square. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart's right there. Molly wrote a neat reply to Irish Paddy, oh, saying Mike Maloney wants to marry me, and so leave the Strand and Piccadilly, or you'll be to blame. For love has fairly drove me silly, hoping you're the same. It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye, Piccadilly, farewell, Leicester Square. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart's right there.
Oh yeah, we had to get up and do the milking every morning. Before, everything, all the chores would get done. I helped my father, and John usually helped my mother.
So you had animals on the farm? And
Yeah, we had to get up and do chores and all the milking twice a day. Milk 5 cows twice a day.
what other animals did you have?
We had 2 horses that did all our plowing and the tending of the crops, and then we raised hogs, and we had we had chickens, and we raised hogs for sale. Besides the pork we butchered, we ate an awful lot of hams and pork. We'd butcher and cure it and just lay there, and we'd what called sugar cured hams, lay there unwrapped, just in the basin. The basin, of course, is unheated. And then we put down sausage and other meats we put down in lard. But we never butchered beef. We always bought that at the store. But all the pork we ate was all our own butchered pork. And chickens, of course. That'd give us all the eggs and chicken meat we wanted. But potatoes, pretty well, the food we ate in the wintertime was pretty well raised in the summer. Navy beans, we raised all our beans, raised all our potatoes, and the potatoes was stored in the basement all along. When the chickens weren't laying, you put your eggs down in water glass, what they call water glass, and that would preserve the eggs when the chickens weren't laying a couple months of the year. And we pretty well, we bought very little food. We had most of our own food, fruit we bought and canned, of course. We didn't have fruit trees, but we bought food in season, and an enormous amount of cans. My mother canned for the wintertime. Hundreds of quarts of peaches and cherries, all prepared in season when the fruits were growing. We didn't have orchard trees. We had to buy the fruit. Mother had we had hundreds of cans of different fruits that we kept, and beans. We canned a lot of green beans. I can't think of other food. Tomatoes. I don't forget whether we. Yeah, we used to have cans of tomatoes too. Yeah, usually a sauce, tomato sauce, not tomato juice, canned tomatoes. Well, to eat in the wintertime. We had a winter supply of it. That would take. We had 5 children there, so that'd take hundreds of cans of all kinds of fruits and vegetables to be put up in the summer.
You remember when you were going to school as a little boy, do you remember what punishment was like, how kids get in trouble, and is it different from today?
Yeah, I got in trouble. I used to have to go to the superintendent. I had a rubber hose they'd spank you on the legs with. I remember I had to go to this principal's office a couple of times.
Remember what you got in trouble for?
Probably talking or throwing spitballs or something like that.
They'd do that, and they would
Sassing the teacher, or not studying. Well, they wouldn't get you for not studying, but usually a misdemeanor. Prankish things I would do, I guess.
And so they would take a rubber hose and hit your legs?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
old would you have been?
Principal, teachers never did it. I was 10. I was 10 years old, and I left. I was in the 4th grade, I think. Yeah, I was in the 4th grade when I left. And the 4th grade teacher and I really never got, I think that's the only time I went to the principal was under her. She never liked me very well, I guess. I got punished for her from several times. And she made me change my writing from left-handed to right-handed. That's the reason I probably had trouble all my life. I think they don't do that anymore, but they did then. And she made me change from, that was pretty old to make the change too, 4th grade. I went 3 grades writing with my left hand, and then the 4th grade she made me make that change. It wasn't good for my mental health, I'm sure. Handicapped me somewhat.
What kind of games did the kids play at school? Do you remember what?
Recess?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, we had
Sports?
sports, swings, slides, swings and slides mostly, playing tag, and I guess mostly using the swings and the slides and merry-go-round, sort of merry-go-round type of thing. Anyway, they had some appliances there for recess every day, twice a day, morning and afternoon. And that was mostly the games we played, I guess. Girls and boys mostly separated. Baseball, I mean, we played some baseball, I guess, during recess. I forget if recess was a half an hour or 15 minutes. Recess time, twice a day.
Where did your clothes come from? How would you get
Mostly bought clothes. My mother never made any clothes. She used to make all of our nightgown. We wore a nightgown. We wore nightgowns, and my mother made our nightgowns. But all shirts, coats, all clothing was bought. All of our clothing. Mother never.
Remember from where? Was it?
She did a lot of mending. My goodness, she used to mend. She used to sit there evenings mending socks by the hour. When they'd get holes in her toes, we never threw anything away. We'd bend the heels and what they called darning. She used to put the sock on a darning thing and close up the holes, toes and heels. Throw them away at the very end. And I remember we used to wear your stockings the whole week. Mother washed only every Wednesday or every Monday. Every Monday morning was wash day. And we'd wear our clothes for the whole week long. Take a bath only on Saturday night. That tub. And when I went to high school, of course, I was in sports all the time, and I always showered, so I never had to wash at home. But every Saturday night, all the kids, everybody took their baths. One night a week. Wore clothes all week long.
How would you describe the differences between the world you grew up in as a child and as the world it is today?
Oh, great difference, especially in religion. My religion was very strict when I was a child. I had to stay dressed up all day Sunday. We couldn't play any games. I couldn't play any baseball. I couldn't do anything. I was, well, not many of the children did. Some of my Catholic friends, of course, were not so restricted on Sunday, but we were very restricted on Sunday. That was a bad day for kids.
Yeah, you were what religion was it?
Methodist religion, Methodist church, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Sunday you'd have to get up and...
I had to go to church and Sunday. So my father wasn't too active in church. Well, he couldn't hear good. My father was a 7th-month child, born in 7 months, and he was deaf all of his life. He never heard a bird sing all of his life long. He couldn't hear light sound, and he couldn't hear in church, so he didn't go to church too often. In fact, my father, I think, was an agnostic when he died. I don't believe he believed in much in life after death. His mother was a very religious woman, and his father, I didn't think, his father never went to church, but he wrote a letter to his daughter when she asked him about his religion, and his answer was very much of a believer in Jesus Christ. So he wrote a letter to her telling about his belief, but people thought he was sort of an agnostic or non-believer, but the letter he wrote to his daughter when she asked him. His daughter was a minister's wife, and she wrote asking his father his letter. Someplace in the family that letter is still available. I remember seeing it many times, and either your mother has it or David has it. I hope that didn't get lost because it was a very memorable letter telling about his religion when everybody thought probably he was an agnostic or atheist even.
Who are you talking about there? Your father? Or?
Huh?
You're talking about your father?
My grandfather. My grandfather,
grandfather
yeah.
On which side? Grandfather on which side?
My father's side. My grandfather on my father's one that was a doctor. He never went to church. His wife, as I say, was very, very religious, a Methodist, and always very active in church work. Well, the Methodist church was right across the street from our house. My mother played the pipe organ there. She was an organist, and that was before the days they had electricity. They used to have to pump the organ to get the sound. Had a guy to pump it, I remember when my mother used to go over and practice. She used to take us kids with us. She didn't want to be in the church all alone, but at that time they had electric pump. But I remember when they used to have hand pumps for organists. Went to a country school, one-room school for all 8 grades. One teacher, walked a mile and a quarter to get to school, no buses, dirt roads in front of the house. There was no, dirt roads for the first couple of years, then they gravelled it. And after I left, it was cemented. But I lived on a dirt road in the wintertime, couldn't even drive the car out. It was so muddy and miry, and we used a bobsled or a horse and buggy in the winter.
Mm-hmm. He just, your father, did he just run the farm? What was his, what did he do for a living? What did your father do for a living?
My father at that time of the First World War,
yeah.
He was a carpenter in Normal. We weren't on the farm. Oh, okay. We were living down in Normal. Uh-huh. And he was a carpenter. He's a carpenter.
What kind of things did he do you know?
Huh?
You know what kind of things he built? Or
houses mostly. Houses, yeah. He worked for a contractor that contracted, and he worked some, I remember one winter while I was there, he was gone considerable time. He worked in a church in Chinoa, a town about 10 or 15 miles away. And he'd stay up there all week long and then come home just a weekend. But he worked on a church up there that his contractor had a bid in. But he didn't contract, he was just worked for a contractor. And not too steady, of course. There's a lot of times in the wintertime when he couldn't work, and although he made pretty good money for that time of year, he made $1 an hour, but there's a lot of times that he was off work and didn't work too steady, especially in the winter. So it was not a very fluent life.
What did your grandpa do for a living?
Nothing. He was retired from Methodist Episcopal Church. He was a minister all his life until he retired. He retired early with some sort of a nervous condition he had. So he retired early, and then he had about 2 or 3 acres, I think, and he'd done a lot of gardening and farming and selling produce in his retirement years, and that's how he subsidized his, of course he got a pension. He worked long enough as a minister to have a pension. He had a pretty good pension, and then he had a pension from the Army. He lied about his age and went into the Civil War when he was 16.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So he, as I remember, his last pension was $75 a month. And that was a pretty good part of his later living. $75 a month wasn't bad at that time.
You know anything he did in the Civil War?
Not much. I don't think he ever got into any battles. Mostly the Civil War ended shortly after he got in, I think. So I don't think he ever got in any real, any of the big battles.
You know what general he fought under, anything about
No, I don't. I'm not familiar with that, and I'm not familiar just how long he was in, but I don't think too long. Anyway, he was never with any Grants or Lees. Grant, well, he was north, of course. My other grandfather bought his way out. You could buy your way out.
By a substitute? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my other grandfather bought his way out of the army. He never went. Huh? Orville, my dad's father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see him much, or?
Huh?
Did you see your dad's father much?
Well, no, I didn't see him. He was considerable. He was 20 years older than his wife. He didn't get married till he was 40. He was a doctor, and he had a circuit around, and he was a doctor when he met my grandmother. He was around 39 or 40 years old. He was a doctor when when my grandmother's sister was born. And that's where he met my grandmother, doctoring his mother's sister for childbirth. And she was 20 and he was 40 when he was married, before he was married. So he was considerably older than my father. There was 5 members of my family. He was 12 years old, 12 years younger than his his sister. He was come along 12 years after his last sister was born. His brother was 16 or 17 years old when he was born. So I never knew. I never knew him I guess I never knew him at all. He died around 1995, 1905 or 6, I think. I was born 10, and I died. He was later than that because I was just a baby when after he died. My mother we lived in my grandmother's house. We moved into my grandmother's house, and I died in my grandmother's arms. She died suddenly. Just sitting holding me.
Your grandmother?
Yeah,
my grandmother on your
dad's side. Yeah.
She was holding you,
and she died. Yeah, right in the chair. Huh?
You know what she died of, or?
Heart attack, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose a heart attack because it was suddenly. My mother looked up and saw that she was gone, and she was holding me at that time. So that's probably a heart attack then, certainly.
Heart attack or a stroke are probably the...
Yeah, she died right there in the chair. Yeah. My grandfather lingered on she probably was bedfast for 7 or 8 months, and he was out of it in a kind of a coma, huh?
It's your mother's dad?
My father's dad. My father's dad, yeah.
Father's dad died before you were born?
Just shortly, yeah. It must have been 1908 or 9, because I was just a baby when she held me, and she lived not too long after. She lived long enough to take care of her husband until he died. He died right there in the house, died bedfast, had to have diapers. Well, he was in a coma, I guess. I suppose several months before he finally died, but my grandmother took care of him right there at the house. And I guess I was probably 8 or 9, not too much longer, because I couldn't have been too old when my grandmother died, I couldn't have been too old if I was in her arms when she died. I must have been a small child, probably 1911 maybe. Not even probably under a year old, I imagine. But she took care of her husband until he was gone. And she, in the last years, my grandfather, I guess, wasn't too wealthy, although he was a circuit doctor, because she took in, there's a university there. She took in university students, 2 or 3 of them, all during the school year, I remember. Fed them and had a room for them, 2 or 3 girls, I think. And she did that for several years, so she helped with the, I don't think my grandfather died with very much money, grandmother. He had a runaway when he was, horses run away, and it damaged him somewhat, and he never was quite normal since then. Several years. He died in his 80s, and I guess he was in his 70s when the runaway happened. Damaged his head. Yeah, well, Colin come up and change clothes and go to school. Walked to school until I went to high school, and then they didn't have no bus service into high school at all. We had to have our own transportation. So when I went to high school, it was kind of precarious getting there. I had to sometimes rely on a dentist that lived in Edwardsburg. He used to come by every morning, and he'd pick me up sometime. Then there was a bus that would run from South Bend from time to time. It was not too regular, but then I'd take that for transportation. In the last couple of years, when John and I went to high school, we had an old Model T Ford that we had to drive to high school. So John and I had a car to go into high school. I was in all sports. John never played football. John never played baseball. I don't know what he did all the time till I was ready to go home. He had to fool around after school. He wasn't on the base. He didn't go out for baseball. He played basketball, is all. But he never went out for baseball or football. So the guy had to wait around for me all week long, an hour or so, while I was practicing all the sports. I was in everything. I guess John did a little track work of some kind. I can't remember what it was. I was a pole vaulter in track, but I was in every sport.
Did you do that after school?
Yeah, practice after school, and the games, of course, on. I guess we played the games, some of them Saturday, but most of them on Friday afternoon with other schools, neighboring towns around. We won the conference championship in my last year in high school.
How many people were in your high school?
Well, my graduating class got down to 28 people. When we started out, there was 160 in the freshman class, and they kept dropping out till at graduating, I think it was only 28 people, 20 in my graduating class.
Did your parents encourage you to stay, or did you want to?
No, they encouraged me to stay. That was an expense for them too, of course. We had no transportation to get there, and
all your brothers and sisters finish high school?
Yeah, all finished. The only one who went to college was Ralph, the son. John and I, Virginia, all just finish high school, but we all finished 4 years of high school.
But a lot of families didn't.
Huh?
Did the reason that there were so many dropouts, was that because families thought it was more important to work on the farm? Or?
Yeah, they just dropped out of school. But I remember it was about 100. It seemed like about 160. It started out in the freshman year, and 28 to 30. I don't know how many of the junior classes behind me, but there was only about 28 to 30 in the time they got to graduation.
And
they just drop out and go to work on their farms, or just go to work in factories, or just not finish high school. Very few finished compared with what started out in the 9th grade.
So did the families have to pay for the high school then, or was it public education like it is today?
Well, there's public education. I don't know what we bought. Of course, we bought all our own school book. All our own school books were purchased by individual. And that was with 4 children. It was quite a. Oh, I don't think I ever had a new book. We always used to get second-hand books. You'd buy all the drugstores would carry second-hand books at the first season. So I don't think I ever had a new book. All our family used second-hand books. But we had to purchase our own books, and I don't know, I guess the schools purchase them now, don't they, for you?
Yeah, I think they give the basic books, yeah. The public schools.
Yeah. Yeah, we had to furnish all our own books, all our own writing paper, everything, all accessories, all. But I don't know whether there's any, and it seems to me there's a tuition to go to high school, too. I'm not sure of that, however. 1928, graduated from high school. I was working in the dairy there or something in Cass, and then I worked in the bakery in October. My school friend and I, one of the boys I graduated with, decided to take a trip to California. We were going to California. So we had an old Templar. I know everybody heard of. That's the only car I ever heard of with that name. It was called a Templar. Anyway, we started out, and I don't know what we had in mind. We didn't have enough money to get there. We run out of money in Keokuk, Iowa, and fortunate enough to get a job on the road. We worked on the road for a couple of weeks and decided California was out, so we started back in that old Templar, and the lights burned out on the way back to Chicago. All night long we drove. It was nice night, as I remember, and quite the good moon out. But I don't think we run into 3 or 4 cars during the nighttime. No traffic at all, and we traveled all night long. Got into Chicago the next morning, but I don't think lights probably went out at 10 or 11 o'clock. We drove all night long, and with no bother of traffic.
What were the roads? Were the roads paved, or?
Paved road, yeah. It was a paved road all the way to Chicago. Yeah. Started about 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, I remember. Got into Chicago Sunday morning. And then, fortunately, my friend, brother-in-law, had a job worked in Chicago. He got us a job in the streetcar company, both of us. A pretty fair job for those days. I think we got 75 or 80 cents an hour.
What'd you have to do?
Well, first we were washing windows in the streetcar buildings for 4 or 5 months. I mean, I worked in the paint shop painting roofs of streetcars. Well, I guess I worked there for 5 or 6 years. Dick quit and went back to Michigan to live, He only worked there a couple of years, but I guess I worked there. Well, I worked there till after I was married, 1932. So I worked there 4 or 5 years, and it was a very menial job, and wasn't getting any place. I could have been I guess if I worked up to painting streetcars, I started out with roofs. I was painting on the roofs of streetcars.
What year was that?
1928. We come right back. We was only gone about 3 or 4 weeks and came back to in October, or latest the 1st of November when we got back. And right away brother-in-law got us this job in the streetcar company. And after, it was just at the start of the terrible depression, and I finally got what I thought was a good job with the household finance. I went to household finance, finally got a job there that I thought would be a better job, and I only worked, I had a hard time getting it, but I kept going down and talking to the guy. He was from Cass, his friend of my father-in-law's, and he finally got me into the household finance where he was working. I worked 1 week and got fired. Fired me after a week. And
what did you have to do? What were you supposed to do?
I was out collecting money for the people that couldn't pay their bills. I wasn't very good at that. Anyway, he fired me after the first week of work, out of work, and I got very menial jobs for a long time. I was still collecting, but I was collecting. I got a job collecting, but it was for not people that didn't have about to be evicted from their homes. I used to try and get $1 or $2 out of them, and I wasn't so good at that, so I got fired. Anyway, I went to the Midland Club as a collector. That was collecting from people that weren't paying their bills. They belonged to a city club, and they were lawyers, doctors, and people that worked downtown Chicago. It was a luncheon club, is what it was, and some rooms there they had room for people. Anyway, it was a city, what they call a city club, and that was a lot easier connecting from those type of guys than it was from these poor people that didn't have just couldn't pay their bills. And so I did that for, I guess, a year and a half, and then I went out with the manager of that city club. He was a manager. He got a job as a manager of a golf club, Olympia Fields Golf Club, one of the most exclusive clubs in Chicago. And I went out there with him for that summer. Catherine was pregnant. We couldn't find a place out at Olympia Fields to live, so she had to go back to Michigan to live with my parents all summer long, and I lived out there at the country club, $75 a month. Everything found. I got all my room and board, everything. But that's all I got for that. I was making $75. Then out of work in November, and one of the members at that country club was a general manager of all the Sears stores, and he got me a job. Well, I went into him, and he put me on. Well, he didn't really put me on. He transferred me to the manager of the store downtown, and I got on as an extra, what they call an extra. You'd go in there about 8 o'clock in the morning and sit there all day long until they needed you, either on the floor for a busy time or in the shipping room. In the shipping room, mostly they'd get busy in the afternoon and sit there and wait to go to work. Mostly you got on sometime during the day for 4 or 5 or 6 hours, but sometimes you sit down there and never get a job at all. So it wasn't a very good job, very meager job. I think I was making $12 or $13 a week, and Catherine came over. We had a little one-room apartment, and we had the baby. $12 or $13 or $14 a week is about the extent of my salary, and then I kept working up from then on in the stockman, and finally got on the sales floor, and then managed the rug department. I was manager of the rug department.
And what year would that have been?
At Sears, I worked for Sears then for 40 years.
Right.
Yeah.
But during the Depression, what?
During the Depression, yeah, that's when I got that
was the first
bigger job, yeah. And really, I guess it was awful hard to get any job, so this guy he just referred me to the manager of the State Street store, and they put me on there mostly through his influence, I suppose, because it's awful hard to get in. I suppose he had some influence on that, but he did very little. I went into his office, he referred me to the manager, State Street, and he put me, managers at that store, put me on. So, but that's, I just progressed from there on, and I spent all my working life at Sears, retired at Sears. When I finally retired, I never got to be in the big money, the manager of the stores, they're the guys that made the big money. But I retired as merchandise manager. That was manager of I was manager of the hard lines and big tickets, all of the Grand Rapids store. I made a mistake. I was manager of Lawrence Avenue, and I could have continued there, but State Street, the guy went to the Army, and I guess I didn't think he was coming back or something. Anyway, I transferred to the State Street store, and during his term in the Army, be damned if he didn't come back after about a year and a half. So then I was out of a job. I couldn't get back into any. All the Sears stores had their department managers, so I had to sell furniture for a while. But I through my management, I knew the sales manager of the rug department for the whole company, and luckily, I was probably lost. I got lost and just I had to go selling furniture.
Why don't you talk about how you met Catherine?
Oh, she met me. I didn't meet her. I was when we were sophomores in high school. I went to a party with her, and she went with me until we got married. I went with several people, but she stayed pretty close to. She and I. Well, any time I wanted to date her, I could date her, but I don't think she dated too many other guys. One or two that she dated, fairly steady, but I don't think she ever went with anybody steadily but me.
So she was in high school?
And ever since we were in sophomores in high school, yeah. Yep. And thank God, some of the gals I married, I went out with. I'd hate to think of having to living the life with her. Catherine's been a wonderful thing that she stayed with me rather than me staying with her.
So do you remember when you were dating Catherine? What'd you do on dates?
Parties, mostly parties, school parties. I guess as long as we were in high school, they were mostly parties that schools had. That was most of the day, maybe a show or two. South Bend had a big theater, maybe one or two that I could afford to take her to, but mostly were free parties with high school events that we went to on dates. Didn't date too often. We were, well, in the meantime, I think I dated another girl in high school. Yeah, I did, pretty steadily for one summer. Didn't date Catherine at all. Had this other girl. She was a class ahead of me. And for quite a while, I went pretty steady with her. Didn't go with Catherine at all. Then after I give up, well, then I give up dating altogether. I didn't date anyone. I was going to date in my senior year. I was going to devote it to study and not date at all. So I kind of broke off with her. Never did get back to her. And then gradually I started dating Catherine again. But she was more faithful than I was dating me. There's a couple of guys that she went steady with, but not too many. Not too many. And anytime I wanted to date, I didn't treat her too good, but she was certainly faithful to me, and that was a blessing because I'm not sure that I would have married anyone as good as her. I could have run into some girls that I might have got married rather than her in that interim. Thankfully, I didn't, because she was a faithful woman. Well, hardly. I told you, I guess I didn't even. She used her mother's wedding ring. I didn't even buy her a wedding ring. We're engaged. We weren't engaged at any time at all. We decided in 3 years after she came back from California to decided in 3 days we was going to get married. No plans, no honeymoon. I'm sure she would have joined some kind of a wedding ceremony, but nothing. And then we did elope finally. One time when she went to California, and when she came back, I decided we should get married. So we decided in 3 days, I guess, to get married. And I got a guy to take us to Valparaiso, and had the Marian, they called him the Marian priest over there, Marian preacher. He married a lot of people from Valparaiso, out of Valparaiso. That was his job. He was justice of the peace. He was the justice of the peace. But he married a lot of elopers, and we went over there one Sunday, got married. She had to use her mother's wedding ring. We had no engagement period or anything. I didn't even have she used her mother's wedding ring. I was underage, so I had to lie about my age, and we had to go over to get a license to another town and back to Valparaiso to get married. And we married in secret. Who was had friends, judges in Valparaiso, wrote him and told him, asked him if Catherine Follett was any. Catherine Kimberly was any his relation, so he knew about it, and he kept it secret until we let it out. Well, I remember the day we let it out. He said, "Well, I knew about it for a long time," and he'd known about it since this guy wrote to him and asked him if Catherine Kimberly was any relation to him, and of course he said.
You just met and got married in the courthouse. Is that what you said?
wasn't a courthouse, just a peace office, just a peace right in his house. It was right in his house. But he was called marrying judge. He married a lot of elopers. That was kind of I guess more than any other justice of peace in the country. Anyway, that was kind of a record guy. Well, anyway, that's the guy we knew about, and we went over there. I had a guy from my work. I had no car of my own. He took me over there that Sunday, and got married. That's how quick we made our decision.
Do you have friends? Anybody? Do you have witnesses or friends go with you?
He was the only one. The guy drove the car, the only witness we had, and I had to. I don't know how I get by with lying about my age, because I think he knew it, but he told me I was too young. But for some way or another, I was only 20, and you had to be 21, I think, to without permission or something. Anyway, some way or another, I remember went to another town to get a license. We had to get a license and bring it back to Valparaiso before he could marry us. I didn't expect to have to go to another town. I don't know why it was open. That was Sunday, I think. I don't know why that office in Valparaiso or wherever it was. It was another town, not Valparaiso. It's a county seat. Anyway, we got the license that day, and come back to Valparaiso, and he married us. But it was I'm sure, not a very happy marriage for her. Anyway, she did it.
And so then what? So then you went back, since you didn't tell anybody. Where'd you both go?
She met her. I didn't even take her back to Chicago, or go to her aunt's, and her aunt didn't even know we were going to get married, of course. And so she called him and told him she couldn't go for some reason. And she says, "Well, I'm here in Chicago now. I'll meet you out at some restaurant along the route back to Fort Wayne." Her mother lived in Fort Wayne, and she waited. We left her off. The poor girl left her off at that restaurant. She says, "Stop. I'll meet you at that restaurant on the way back to Fort Wayne." Well, her aunt didn't get there for 2 or 3 hours, so she sat there in that restaurant waiting, and we went on back into Chicago. She sat in that restaurant for 2 or 3 hours waiting for her aunt to come through to take her back to Fort Wayne. And this guy and he had to get the car back. He'd get his car back, or he had some engagement or something, so we had to leave her right stranded out there at that restaurant. And her aunt didn't pick her up. I think she waited there a couple or 3 hours before her aunt came through to pick her up.
Why did you finally decide to announce it? How long did it take to announce it, and why did you finally decide to announce to everybody the wedding?
What?
Well, why? First of all, why did you keep it a secret?
Well, I don't know. She wouldn't have kept it a secret. She'd have moved into an apartment right away. But I don't know. I had some kind of silly idea that I didn't have the right kind of job, and I don't know what we did. Anyway, she kept her apartment for a while, and I went back to my boarding house, and then we finally announced it after she got. She's the one that she instigated it. She's the one that got sick of that, so she moved with me into a boarding house, and we stayed there for a couple of months, I guess, and then she picked up this apartment out on South Shore Drive. Or she had a couple of friends from Casablanca that lived there, so she learned about this apartment. So she moved us out. We moved out to that apartment, furnished apartment, no furniture, nothing. And I worked at the streetcar company, I guess, until I got this other job. May have been a year or so. We lived in this little one-room apartment, I don't know why we didn't start renting a house or something and move into a house, but we didn't. I still was in doubt about my future, so I was reluctant to make any permanent decisions. So she stuck it out with me in this little boarding house for a while. I guess we stayed a month, maybe 2 months there, and she finally, of course, got sick of that. She had nothing to do, and she got this little furnished apartment out there, and we lived there until I was working at the Midland Club then, collecting, and until I got transferred to, no, we moved to another apartment outside of that. We moved to, we moved to another apartment because where John was living with us, and I was working at the Midland Club then, and we moved to a little bit bigger apartment, and John lived with us. We had, John had to sleep my brother had to pull out bed where he laid it down in the living room, and Catherine and I had a bedroom out there, but we lived out there until the spring, till I forget, 1929 or 30, I guess. I went to Olympia Fields. We tried to get an apartment out there, could find no apartment to live in, so she went back and lived with the folks that summer. I stayed at Olympia Fields at this country club, and that's when I met this guy that got me into Sears Roebuck. In the fall, I come back and got this mediocre job. It wasn't a very good job. Well, it was an extra is what it was, what they called extras.
So that was 19, you were 20 years old. Catherine was?
20, yeah, I was 21 by then.
21?
Yeah, I was 21 by then. I was 20 years old when we got married, but I think that fall, we got married in April, and I think I was 21 in August. So I was 21 shortly after I was married. And of course, she's the one that, from then on, she instigated most of the 28 or 30 moves that we made, always for the better. She always upgraded our living conditions. Pretty meager at first. Well, at first, yeah, we had this little furnished, I didn't have furniture. And the furniture, the next apartment we moved to, her mother, in the meantime, had divorced, and all of her mother's furniture, most of it, pretty complete, was stored in her friend's storage room. And Dick Beckwith, who went to California, the guy who went to California, a close friend of mine, kept bringing me over different parts of the furniture as we enlarged our apartment. First, I think he brought over the rugs and Davenport, things like that for a living room, and then the bedroom sets came a little bit later. 3 or 4 different times as we kept enlarging the apartment, we'd move more of her mother's furniture over there until we had the dining room set, the living room, well, all of her mother's furniture practically. But we didn't get it all at once. We got it kind of a piecemeal thing as we enlarged, we kept enlarging the apartments. And finally, I guess when the final move, we got the final amount of furniture, that was the dining room set, is when we moved into an apartment, or not an apartment. Yeah, it was a big, well, it was a house. No, it was a house out on 98th Street. That was the last of our apartments. This was a house that we rented out on 90. That was another one of those foreclosures deals that was in the hands of a company, a real estate company, and we rented from them $25 a month for it was a 2-bedroom house. I had just the 2 children then, and that's where Charlie was born. The 3rd child was born out in that house.
What was your first car? auto?
Oh,
When did you get that?
my first car was when we moved out of Chicago. We never had a car in Chicago. From time to time, we used her grandfather's old car, but we never owned a car until we moved to Grand Rapids. And one day I saw we always had good transportation to the store back and forth, but she did some long trips carrying groceries in a baby buggy for many years. And finally we got a car when in Grand Rapids. I saw a car on the side of the street, secondhand car that I think was $600-700, and that was our first car. That was when I lived in. That was our first house in Grand Rapids.
What year?
Early 40s.
Early 40s?
Early 40s, yeah. That was our first car. And all that time, many times, she had long distance to go to in Homewood, or when we lived out in 98th Street. She walked, I guess, 4 or 5 blocks to a grocery store where she could. No, even in Chicago, she had to carry food in a. And we had Mary Jo and Bill Lynn, and she had just a baby buggy to. I think she walked 4 or 5 blocks to there's a little store across the street where she could pick up things, but to a full supermarket, she had to walk 3 or 4 blocks to that, and she carried the stuff in the baby buggy home. Had no other means of transportation.
What did you do to get to work?
IC. I was riding the IC railroad. Mostly, I guess, the streetcar. IOC was pretty expensive. I guess mostly when I lived in town there, I took the streetcar to work. That was only 7 cents a trip. 7 cents to ride downtown, any place in Chicago on the streetcar. So I used mostly the streetcar for transportation back and forth. We were living out at, first out at 79th, and then around 45th, I think, in Cottage Grove. I used the streetcar as transportation.
Did we miss any significant events?
Huh?
Did we miss any significant events that in your life that we should talk about?
No, yeah, I guess the main thing, for as long as I was going to Florida, and since I retired, all I did was play golf morning and afternoon. Did no volunteer work or anything. When I come to Greencroft, I started putting in, for the first time in my life since my retirement, I started with many hours of volunteered work, and have continued that right straight through to today. About 18 years we've lived in Greencroft now, and I've continued volunteering all those 18 years, which was a great satisfaction to Catherine, because she always volunteered work and thought I was wasting my life, which I was, by playing golf and nothing else. Not even Catherine wasn't interested in golf, so I spent quite a few of my days, winter and summer, away from home on the golf course. Waste of time. That's about it, I guess, for my life. I can't think of anything that we've left out. When day is done, at eventide, when day is done, I love to watch the setting sun, to see the birds fly home to rest, and to comfort young ones in the nest. The moon casts down its eerie light to battle the darkness of the night, bathing the earth in its silvery glow, equals any sight I know. The evening breeze, in its gentle way, conquers the best of the dying day. The dew on the grass, as it reflects the moon's light, sparkles like diamonds into the night. The stars in the sky appear to be one as the earth is darkened by the setting sun. Fireflies add to the evening show, blinking their lights as they flit to and fro. A few lines above, I've written in verse, are just a few joys of the universe. The real pleasures in life are given us free. God made it that way. Read his book and you'll see.